Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today I am just over the moon because I have 16 amazing booktubers here on this video to share with you their favorite books of 2022. I think that this is the coolest thing that I've ever been able to do so far on my Booktube channel. I've actually gathered together 16 of my favorite booktubers, and don't get me wrong, I have like a million favorite booktubers, but I've got 16 amazing booktubers here to share with you their favorite books of 2022. I got this amazing idea from Library of a Viking, and he will be on here on this video later to share with you one of his favorite books. But he so kindly allowed me to steal his idea. I'm gonna have everyone's channels down in the description so that you can check out their channels and subscribe if you want to, because they are all some amazing, amazing people. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you do so. Don't forget to click the like button and comment down below and let me know what your favorite book of 2022 was. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter. But with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this video and check out some of these amazing booktubers' favorite books of 2022.
Hello everyone, and my name is Kara from Caras Bookshelf. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Hannah, for inviting me. My favorite book this year was Babel by R.F. Kuang. I loved this book. 5 freaking stars all day. Babel is about a young Chinese boy named Robin who gets taken out from an orphaned situation in China and transported overseas to England to study at this university called Babel. It is an institution based around translation and deeply understanding languages, and you're following him as a student at Babel throughout his time there. At first, Babel is an institution full of hope and promise for Robin, but as you continue to follow him at his time there, you realize that things at Babel are really not what they seem. There is a whole discussion surrounding very heavy political-based issues in this book, and one of my favorite parts about this book is that it's hard to tell where it's going. You think you know where it's going at one point, but then it totally cuts off into a different direction. There are plot twists and turns around every corner, and not only does it have an insanely great plot, but it has wonderful commentary about institutionalism, classism, and racism that our society has kind of been built on. I loved the information about linguistics that I learned from here. I loved the characters that we got. The character development was incredible. I think this book is the best dark academia book I've ever read in my life. It is incredible. I love it. My fiance loves it. Everyone I know loves it. Please go read this book.
Hi everyone, I'm Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin. A huge thank you to Hannah for asking me to do this, but I'm sharing with you what is potentially my favorite book of 2022. I'm not 100% sure, but I seem to gravitate towards this one whenever I think about the year as a whole, and it's definitely one that you would have heard of, is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I really enjoyed this one. I love the film so much. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and I was worried that I wouldn't enjoy this book as much because a lot of the times books that inspired movies are usually quite disappointing, and I tend to find the movie to be better. But this is a case of the movie and the book both being fantastic, and both of them standing on their own feet. You can really see the inspirations from this book in the film, so if you love the film, fantastic. You'll see loads of things that you'll love in this, but there were loads of parts that were actually quite different too, so I got so much from it. The world is more developed, it has a lot more tension and a bit more teeth than the film too, in my opinion. But yeah, this is set in a world where dinosaur DNA is discovered and they are brought back to life essentially. You will know what this one's about, you will have seen the movie I'm sure, and if you haven't, what are you doing? But I would say that this was definitely a book that stood out to me this entire year, and I love it so much.
Hannah, thank you so much for having me on the channel. My name is Johan from the channel Library of a Viking. I am a channel that mostly focuses on fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, and last year I read 45 books, which is much lower than I usually do, but I read so many great books. And also do apologize about the green screen, I was just too lazy to take it down, but I can do this. So, my number 1 book of 2022 is literally a book I finished 5 days before the year ended, and it's not a book I expected to love this much, and that is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. Now, I've been putting off reading this book for so long since the series is unfinished, but my patron voted for me to read it, and I'm so glad I did. I loved everything about this book. I mean, everything. I mean, this book is truly a must-read for fans of fantasy. The story basically follows a group of thieves and known as the Gentlemen Bastards as they try to pull off this daring and almost impossible heist, and they navigate this dangerous underworld of their city. Now, the main character, Luck Lamora, is such an amazing character. He is both complex and he's an underdog, which I'm a huge fan of. And then the supporting cast, the Gentlemen Bastards, I mean, the whole cast is just incredible. Everyone has their own unique personalities and motivations, and the character dynamics are just incredible. So The Lies of Luck Lamora is one of the best fantasy books I have ever read, and I would definitely recommend it.
Hi, I'm Jess from Honest Fiction, and on my channel, I mostly read fantasy romance and romance. My top read of 2022 was Stay With Me by Nicole Fiorina. This is a romance series, and I was obsessed. I binged this entire series in 2 days. We are following Mia, and at the start of the story, she is pretty much making her family's life a living hell. So she ends up being diagnosed with not being able to show empathy. She just doesn't care about other people. So her father ends up sending her to this reformatory university, and when she gets there, she meets Ollie Masters. Now, Ollie is the exact opposite of Mia. He feels emotions too deeply, and he is just a cinnamon roll love interest, and I love this. This book, so much goes on plot-wise. It is so fun, unlike any other romance series I've ever read, and I highly recommend checking it out.
I'm Bookboard. Thanks for having me on. Now, this year, it was a very tough decision to decide what was my favorite book of the year. So I have talked about another book specifically being my favorite book of the year, but today I want to talk about and highlight a different one, which is The Speaking Bones by Ken Liu. Now, The Speaking Bones is the final book in a series, The Dandelion Dynasty, and it just really delivered on everything I could possibly want out of the series. The entire Dandelion Dynasty is an extremely thoughtful series with deep, complex characters, super strong female characters, ideas about politics and heroism and what it means to be a good leader. And The Speaking Bones really blended that all together for such a satisfying conclusion that has really made me think about life in general. And there are some quotes from this book and series that I will probably continue to use in my own life as guiding lights and influencers on how I want to act. I am impressed by the magic and the world building in the series. I feel like it is super underrated, and this is the perfect time to get into the Dandelion Dynasty. The final book is out, and it was incredible, one of my very favorite books of the year. I hope if you give Dandelion Dynasty a try, you will let me know and tell me if you like it or not. Bye!
Hey everyone, my name is Rachel and my channel is Ravenhairedreader. My absolute best book, favorite book of 2022 was House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Crescent City series, and this was my most anticipated read of 2022, and it did not disappoint. This series is an adult urban fantasy romance. It follows our main character, Bryce Quinlan. She is half fae, half human, living in this amazing metropolis that has fae and shifters and werewolves and mermaids and angels and vampires and so many other amazing creatures. After tragedy strikes Bryce, she goes on a bit of a murder mystery hunt with an unlikely angel ally named Hunt Athalar. House of Sky and Breath opened up this world so much more that Sarah J. Maas has created, brought a lot new plot lines in, and has one of the craziest endings that I have ever read in a book. Like, truly, I was shocked, I was stunned, and I had such a good time at reading this book. It was so much fun. I really liked getting to know more of the characters more in depth, and I loved the romance in this book as well. It is absolutely a 5-star read for me, and definitely my favorite book of 2022.
Hi, I'm Isa from the channel Fun Fantasy Books, a corner of the internet where I'll read adult fantasy, young adult, and I mainly do book recommendations, reviews, and occasional book summaries so that you can skip the rereads. My favorite book of 2022 was no doubt Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's such a hidden gem that I beg you to please pick up, because it's not only a standalone, which it makes for the perfect moment when you want to read something but you don't want that much commitment. Trust me. But the pacing, it's phenomenal. The characters are very intense, and reading this book will feel as if you're reading Pride and Prejudice, but with our main character, Emily Mashwick, fighting in a war. I really hope you like this high stakes, low fantasy, but amazing book.
Hi Hannah, Patrick here. Thank you so much for inviting me into your channel. The best book that I read in the year 2022, last year, is The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. This is the second book in the Dandelion Dynasty series, and it is a vast improvement over the first book. It is everything that I want in an epic fantasy novel, and honestly, I think this book is just a masterpiece with incredibly well-written characters and battle scenes. Love this one so much. The world building is also intricate. I think this is the best second book of a series I've read since Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. Highly recommended.
Hello, my name is Riley and my channel is Riley Marie, and my favorite book of 2022 was Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This is an amazing, cozy fantasy book about this girl named Hala who inherits a lot of money, but her family wants to take possession of that money, so they're trying to force her to marry her cousin, but she's like, hell no, I would rather die than marry my cousin. And she ends up finding this magical sword that has this immortal warrior trapped inside of it, and whoever wields the sword is now protected by this warrior. So he is now helping her escape her family, and they spend the book traveling across the country to go find a lawyer so that she can get her inheritance. It is such a cute and fun road trip fantasy book with some grumpy sunshine romance in it. It definitely has cozy fantasy vibes, and I was just obsessed with it. It was just such a fun fantasy and definitely my favorite book of the year.
Hi, I'm Abby from the channel Abby Salter, and thank you, Hannah, for having me on to chat about one of my favourite books. So it's always hard to pick one, but one of my favourite books from 2022 was Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier, the first book in the Seven Waters series. This is a fairy tale retelling of the Six Swans, following a main character, Saoirse, and towards the beginning of the book, her brothers are cursed to turn into swans, and Saoirse is set the task of being able to break this curse and break her brothers free. And I adored Saoirse, this book, the characters, the world. So it's set in a medieval Ireland, Britain setting, really foresty, woodsy. The scenery and the ambience of this is very, very fairy tale-esque, and I just fell in love with the characters, their relationship dynamics, the setting, the magic and the way that magic works in this, and just overall Saoirse as a main character. There's a lot of exposition in this book and a lot of setup, so it was a little bit slow to get started, but once I got into it, I was really, really hooked by these characters and their lives. You can read this as a standalone, but it is also part of a wider series, so I definitely recommend this, especially if you love fairy tale retellings. So that is one of my favourite books of 2022, and thank you, Hannah, again for having me on. Bye!
My name's Kaylee and my channel's name is Kaylee's Books. I read all kinds of genres including fantasy, science fiction, horror, thriller, and romance. And out of the 312 plus books I read this year, my favorite of the year is The Poppy War. The Poppy War is a brutal adult fantasy book, first book in a trilogy. And The Poppy War is a book that follows Rin, our main female protagonist, who starts off as a peasant and studies really hard for a military exam that could take her out of her poor village and into one of the top military schools in the country. After acing the exam and getting placed amongst upper nobility in this military school, Rin has to prove herself both to the teachers and her classmates that she deserves to be there. She fights for her chance to rise above where she began, and along the way discovers that the gods are very real and she might possess a power gifted to her by a god. This book is part school setting, part military fantasy, and it is brutal. Do not get me wrong, this is brutal. There is gore in here. It is a hard read, but oh my goodness, it is a fantastic read. Rin is one of the most interesting characters I've ever gotten to read about. She is a very morally gray character where you're not sure if she is the hero or the villain. This book has a lot of political intrigue along with a lot of very small character moments that are just so fun to read about, such as character friendships, a bully in the school, and potential relationships. The combat is intense and so fun to read about, and the magic systems are incredibly unique. Overall, I loved this book so much and highly recommend it to both fantasy lovers and fantasy newbies alike.
Hi Hannah, it's Grace from the channel Grace Dion. Thank you so much for having me as part of this video. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of very exciting books mentioned, and I am about to cheat Just gonna tell you that right off the top, because my favorite book of the year in 2022 is going to be the Live Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. And I get it, okay? But at the same time, it is my full belief that that series is one long book because it literally just continues where it leaves off with each further installment. If I really had to pick, it might be The Mad Ship, the second installment in the series, but Live Ship Traders is a nautical, adventurous, character-driven fantasy trilogy that is part of Robin Hobb's larger Realm of the Elderlings. And if you like a slow to medium pace, character-driven story with really great prose and that's hard-hitting emotionally, and also has a fantastic cast of complex characters that you can like follow in various adventures and quests, then I would definitely recommend that series. It is one of the best that I've ever read. So I can't help but acknowledge that entire trilogy as my favorite reads of the year in 2022.
Hello everyone, my favorite book for 2022 was Babel by R.F. Kuang, which follows Robin Swift, who is taking from China to London to work for Queen and Country to make the magic they work, which they cannot make work without foreign languages. And R.F. Kuang did a perfect and amazing job of writing about this historic time in a fantasy book, but making it real to real historic events, and it is just one of the best books I have ever read, and I could not recommend it enough, so please go and read it. It is even better than what people say it is.
Hello there everyone, my name is Avery, or Ava, from the channel Ava's Romance Books, where I primarily read romance novels and love talking about the romance genre. Hannah asked us to talk about our favorite book, and it will come to no surprise from my friends when I say that my favorite romance book is Radiance by Grace Draven. If you are a fantasy romance reader and you have not read Radiance yet, that totally needs to change. This is an arranged marriage romance between Ildiko and Brishan. They are from two different species of people on this fantasy world. So Ildiko is like a Gowrie human woman, and Brishan is Prince of the Kai. He's a spare prince to the Kai Kingdom. They are humanoid creatures like us, but they have gray skin, yellow eyes, sharp teeth, sharp nails, very monster-esque, but he looks stunning, as you can tell. Like, the man is a looker, okay? Anyway, so these two people are spares to their kingdom, so they have to be put in a marriage of convenience or a marriage alliance to align the two kingdoms. This is a friends to lovers arranged marriage that is so fantastic. This is more for the character-driven reader. If you're more of a plot-driven reader, you might want to skip this one just because the romance in here is more heavily focused on than the outside plot. But if you stick around and read book 2, that's when you'll get the heavy plot line, I'll just say. But I absolutely love this fantasy romance, and I need everyone to read it. Thank you so much, Hannah, for asking me to be a part of this. This was so much fun.
Hi everyone, my name's Dom from the channel Dominish Books, and Hannah has asked me to tell you what my favourite book of 2022 was, which did take me quite a bit of deliberation, but I did settle in the end on Zach Argyle's Bonds of Chaos. This is book 3 in his Threadlight series, and I loved this series, and that definitely plays into this one being my favourite of the year. Now, I'm not going to talk about the synopsis because this is book 3 of the series, but if you've read Voice of War and Stones of Light and you've enjoyed them, you should really enjoy this. It's a great culmination of a series. There's some highs and there's some lows of emotion as well. It's all beautifully written. There's such sad parts in here, as you might expect from a final instalment of a fantasy series. All in all, it was an absolute thrill ride, really fast paced, and I loved every minute of it.
Everybody, my name is Sarah from the channel Sarah Reads. Thank you, Hannah, for inviting me to tell you about my favorite book of 2022. My favorite book of 2022 was actually Changes, which is book 12 in the Dresden series. So what I'm actually going to talk about today is my second favorite book of 2022, which is a book called The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by MXTX. This is a Chinese fantasy story that was recently translated into English. The English story is broken up into 5 volumes, 4 of which are already out, and the 5th one will be coming out early in 2023. This is a cultivation style fantasy story which centers around an anti-hero named Wei Wuxian, who was a villainous character who was killed and is brought back to life through a demonic ritual. And when he is brought back to life, we start to discover that his evil reputation may not be warranted, and that some of the complications from his past are very much still ongoing, and he needs to help his former adversary slash friend, whose name is Lam Wangji. He needs to help him figure out this ongoing mystery. This is great for anyone who loves politics in their fantasy stories, anyone who enjoys fantasy romance, and who is looking for a fresh and really, really well done fantasy series.
Hi, my name is Lexi and my channel is Books with Lexi, and my favorite book of 2022 was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is a dark thriller that follows our main character, Shay, and she's listening to a podcast run by one of her old friends from high school, and she learns about the apparent suicide of one of her friends from college, and he puts out a message saying, if you're listening to this, you know who you are, please contact me. So she does, and they end up investigating this case. They very quickly find themselves investigating a very misogynistic type of cult, and we are also watching Shay deal with the traumas of her past. Her and friends were taken advantage of by this man. He was using them in very misogynistic ways. I'm trying to teach them how they fit into the world. So this book deals a lot with misogyny, the patriarchy, trauma. There are a lot of content warnings for this. The beginning of the book does have them listed, so I would check that out or reach out to someone that has read this book. This book is dark and it's a really tough read, but I also think it is incredibly well done, and I think that it is important. And even though it's hard to read and heartbreaking, there is revenge and dealing with past traumas, so there is some hope in it. This is an absolutely incredible thriller, and I would really recommend it.
I hope you guys like this video. I just thought this was the coolest thing to bring you guys some awesome recommendations for wonderful books, and also to introduce some booktubers that a lot of these booktubers are very famous in the booktube community, but some of them you may not have heard of before. If you're interested in my favorite book of the year, you will notice that it is not in this video. That is down in the description. I have my top 10 favorite books of the year, as well as my top 10 favorite romances of the year. So those videos are down below in the description if you are interested in knowing what my favorite books were this year. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to my channel. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Once again, a giant thank you to the amazing booktubers who have collaborated with me, sent in their videos of their favorite books of the year. It honestly it meant the world to me, and I just thought this was a lot of fun. But that is it for me. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.
Fake a smile until I look away, but I've known you too long. It hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.